السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, continue with the 40 hadith of Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, and we reached hadith number 34. Hadith number 34, which is one of the major principles of Deen al-Islam. This hadith is one of the major principles of the Deen of Islam, as Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah himself said about this hadith. The hadith about An-Nahi al-Munkar, to forbid the munkar or the evil. He says, let's read the hadith. عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده، فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه، فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه، وذلك أضعف الإيمان. رواه مسلم. This hadith, Imam Muslim rahimahullah, he mentioned this hadith as it says here in the sharh, in the explanation of it, from Tariq ibn Shihab, and he said: أول من بدأ بالخطبة يوم العيد قبل الصلاة مروان. The first one that started the day of Eid with the khutbah and not the salah was Marwan, the ruler of Al-Madinah. So a man stood up to him and he said, As-salah qabla al-khutbah. As-salah is supposed to be before the khutbah. And this is how it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And as we know that attending the khutbah in Eid is not mandatory, but if a person sits, then he has to be silent. But the salah first, and then the khutbah for whoever wants to sit. فقال, so he said, قد ترك ما هناك, the matter is finished or it's been passed or so. فقال أبو سعيد, so Abu Sa'id al-Khudri رضي الله عنه, he said, أما هذا فقد قضى ما عليه. He said, as for this man that stood up and he said the salah before the khutbah, had done what is upon him, meaning forbidding that evil, enjoining the good, forbidding the evil. And then he said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, then he mentioned the hadith. So here the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man ra'a minkum munkaran فليغيره بيده. This is what they call it, the maratib, or the different levels of forbidding the evil. And that's why, as they said, this hadith is asl, foundation in the subject of change. في صفة التغيير, the change of the situation of the people, the foundation to it is to enjoin good and forbid evil. And to do it with ilm, and to do it with knowledge. Otherwise, anything, if it's not based on the knowledge of the deen, then it becomes ignorance. And ignorance does not bring anything but chaos and evil. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to do specific things according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. And as a very important principle in the deen, that terminologies, of course, ayat of the Quran, a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the words that are mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has meanings to it, and these meanings are not just some linguistic meanings that anybody can interpret it the way that they like. Rather, this is based on clear ilm and knowledge that people have to study it, and if only those who have the knowledge would speak, many of the ignorance would disappear. And that's why we have to be careful with understanding these matters of subjects of matters of the deen according to the ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So briefly, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Man ra'a minkum, which means whoever among you, minkum, sees munkaran. Munkaran is evil or something that is haram. But من رأى منكم, whoever sees, whether it's physical seeing with one's eyes, or knowing something that is munkar, as the ulama they say. So whether it's the ru'ya or the seeing of one's eyes or one's heart, knowing that there is evil present, a person does not have to see it physically with his own eyes. So this is also comes under this. But of course, a person has to make sure that it's present, it's there. And this is to all Muslims. Man ra'a minkum munkaran. Whoever among you sees munkar. And what is the munkar? Munkar is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade, whether it's action or speech, whether it's small or major, at all levels. Anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade, and that requires the knowledge of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade, so that a person does not forbid something that is not forbidden. So the person has to have the knowledge of it. So whoever sees a munkar, so it has to be munkar, and that requires knowledge that it's munkar, that it's haram. And since the khitab or this hadith is addressing all Muslims with different levels, and that's why the levels of forbidding the evil is according to the levels of the Muslims or the position of a person. So the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ, that means let him change him. Let him change. فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ. فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ. The first level is بيده. The ulama, when they mentioned the word فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ, like Ibn Daqiq al-Eid rahimahullah, he said, فَهُوَ أَمْرُ إِيجَاب بِإِجْمَاعِ الْأُمَّةِ. This is the amr, the order here, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ. So let him change it, meaning this munkar. This is according to the consensus of the ummah that this is a mandatory thing. And it's in the Quran that it's wajib, it's mandatory to enjoin the good and to forbid the evil, and it's part of the nasiha of the deen, as mentioned in the hadith of An-Nasiha. So فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ, that means there is no way out. It's mandatory for the person to change the evil. So the Muslim, part of his deen, a foundation to his deen, that he has to change the evil. But how to change the evil? He said, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. The first level, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ, let him change it with his hands, because that's physically changing the evil to make it disappear. And to change it with his hands, like he removed the evil. Whatever the sin, if there's intoxications that a person is, he sees something, a bottle of wine or something like this, then he removes it. Something haram, he removes the evil with his hand, right? And to prevent the person from doing the evil and things like this, to take someone stole something, then to take that physically from him, so that you'd avoid that evil and to return it back to its owner, right? But who is the one that has the right to change something with his hand? Because that's not for everybody. This is for those who are able to do so. And the ability is not the physical ability, and regardless of the outcome of it, but rather it's for the people of authority, those who have the authority to change with their own hands. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the believers to enjoin the good and to forbid the evil, to eliminate the evil or to lessen the evil. But if someone do something or do the act of forbidding the evil and leads to a bigger evil, then he did not forbid the evil. He basically increased the evil. So enjoining good and forbidding the evil is there to change the evil, as it's very clearly what's the objective of it, and not to increase the evil. So who are the ones that have the authority to change it with their own hands, and that brings goodness and does not bring evil? The people of authority. So if the evil is in someone's authority, like someone's house, then he has to remove the evil with his own hands. So if someone walks into his house and he finds something haram, a sinful thing, or an act of sin, someone is sitting from the beginning of the time of the salah till the salah time ends, and he's not praying, and he is his son, for example, or someone under his authority, then he is to forbid that evil by making sure that they would establish the salah. Or a person walks into his house and there is music or things that are forbidden for a person to see, it's being shown or things like this, then he has to change that evil and he has to change it with his hands. So the person of authority and a leader in his country, whether it's a city or a country and so on, then he has the authority to change, like the authorities, like the police, the like of this. And if the person of authority, he gives also individuals authority to change the evil with their own hands, then this is an authority that is given to them, like it used to be in the past for the Muslims. It'd be very clear if someone sees, for example, in the streets in a Muslim world, for example, if they see a bottle of wine in the street, he can easily break it. An individual can do that, and there's no harm because the ruler has given the people this authority. But now, for example, if someone do this, a bigger evil would happen because they are allowed by the authorities to have this, for example. So again, the first level is for the people of authority. فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. Let him change it with his own hands, and each one according to the authority that he has. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. The second level, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. If he's not able to change with his hands. And how he's not able to do, whether physically he's not able to change it with his hands, or if he changes it physically with his hands, it will cause a bigger harm. Because the power of the evil is stronger than him, right? Or since he doesn't have the authority to do so, then it would cause a bigger harm. Then in that case, to go to the second level, and it becomes mandatory upon him, فَبِلِسَانِهِ, then with his tongue. And with lisani, that means with his speech. That means by saying something, or saying a verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet ﷺ forbidding this act, or reminding a person, things like this. Or give a nasiha with kindness and goodness. And if a person is able to do that with his speech, and always with using the hikmah and the wisdom. And when it's times of where ignorance prevail, it's different than when people are upon knowledge and upon goodness. That's one of the things really that without knowledge a person might not be able to understand even some of the statements of the ulama or the early generations of Islam, or even places different than other places. So if someone is living in an environment where there's no existence of a specific evil, for example, and that one evil shows or it's been committed, you might find the speech that is being mentioned is very strong. Why? Because people are the norm of the people that this is evil, so people will take this clearly that this is something that is haram, and to stop it immediately from the beginning. But if a person is in an environment where that evil is widespread, and people, a lot of them are ignorant about the matter, or they do not know, or it becomes easy for them to commit this evil, then it becomes important for the person then to be more gentle. So the issue or the subject of gentleness or being rough in speech and things like this, it depends on the situation. Sometimes you would raise your voice against your children because it's good for them, not because you're angry and that's it, but rather that this is a way of upbringing because they know that this is wrong. Different than someone that doesn't know, or using the wisdom that if I use leniency in this context, it's better. Otherwise, it becomes a person can use a little bit tougher tone. But when, in general, if there is the evil is more widespread, then to have gentleness, this is what is the norm of a person forbidding an evil, especially that he doesn't have an authority since he's changing it with his tongue. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ, if he's not able to change it with his tongue, because he fears also a bigger harm that happened, or fear for himself, or things like this, then فَبِقَلْبِهِ, then with his heart, and that's the least level of the levels of forbidding the evil. And what is the meaning of his heart? is to change and we have to go back to the beginning of the sentence of the hadith, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ, right? That let him change it with his tongue. So with his, and if he's not able to, then let him change it with his heart. So one of the means of change is to change with one's heart. And the heart does not physically change anything, right? But as the Prophet ﷺ said, the heart changes. If the heart would hate the evil, if the heart would abhor the evil, knowing that this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade, and he has the sincere intention that he would change it if he has the ability to do so, if he is someone that has authority, if he's someone that has the means to change it with his tongue, like this is how his heart is. And also what is meant by this is to stay away from that evil, to leave the place where the evil is being committed as a way to forbid it with one's heart. And not to show any approval to it, because biqalbihi means that a person does not approve it whatsoever, does not approve the evil. So if those who are committing the evil, they see that person is showing any form of approving it, like being present and not saying anything and just being in their gathering of the evil that they're committing, that means he did not even follow that least level of forbidding the evil with one's heart. So with one's heart, that means a person should leave the evil and move away from it. And that is وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. This is the weakest of al-Iman. There's no Iman after this. This is the weakest level of al-Iman, is for the believer to hate the evil with his heart, to dislike it, to disapprove it. And as a result of that, he would stay away from being present while the people are committing the evil. There's a hadith also in Sahih Muslim, the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا مِن نَبِيٍّ بَعَثَهُ اللَّهُ فِي أُمَّةٍ قَبْلِي. There is no prophet that Allah sent in a nation before, إِلَّا كَانَ لَهُ مِنْ أُمَّتِهِ حَوَارِيُّونَ وَأَصْحَابٌ, unless he has from his ummah حَوَارِيُّون, disciples and companions, يَأْخُذُونَ بِسُنَّتِهِ, they take from his sunnah, وَيَقْتَدُونَ بِأَمْرِهِ, and they follow his order. ثُمَّ إِنَّا تَخْلُفُ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خُلُوفٌ. Then comes after that khuluf, generations, later generations. يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ, they say what they do not do. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا لَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, and they do what they have not been ordered to do. And if we reflect upon this, this is exactly the reality of many of the Muslims today. Saying what they don't do, and doing what they have not been ordered to do. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, فَمَنْ جَهَدَهُمْ بِيَدِهِ فَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ. Whoever jahadahum, means jihad against them with his hand, he's a mu'min, he's a believer. وَمَنْ جَهَدَهُمْ بِلِسَانِ فَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ. Whoever struggle with them with his tongue, he's a mu'min, he's a believer. وَمَنْ جَهَدَهُمْ بِقَلْبِهِ. Whoever jahadahum, struggle with them with his heart, فَهُوَ مُؤْمِن, he's a believer. لَيْسَ وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ حَبَّةُ خَرْدَلٍ. There is no after that, beyond that from al-Iman, even the weight of a mustard seed. Which is, again, to preserve one's Iman is to know the evil and to abhor it and to dislike it and to stay away from it. And we're living at times which is very clearly times of fitan, because of how many are exposed to all kinds of things on the social media and the internet and things like this, and other reasons, that because of the spread of the evil, you'd find some people, they do not see it as evil. They do not have that forbidden, the evil even with their own hearts, because they say, what's wrong with that evil? There's nothing wrong with it. This is their way of life. This is things like this. Evil is evil. It's not that it's evil for us and it's not evil for someone else. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids something, that means this is evil for everyone. And therefore it's not a relative thing. So a person needs to know the evil from what is good, and to, at least the least, is not to approve it with one's heart, but rather to disapprove it. And this is how the change happens, and that's a bishara, that's by itself is a glad tidings from the Prophet ﷺ, that this is how to establish change. This is how to establish the change, by having one of these categories. And there is no other thing after this. That means a person, the least that he can do is that his heart is to be well established on forbidding the evil or enjoining the good. Otherwise, there's no Iman, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said. Also, very briefly, the subject is a very detailed one, and we're here supposed to be doing things brief, and it's since the Hadith are all foundations of the Deen, so this is something for a person to learn, since everybody is ordered to forbid the evil according to their level. And as the ulama, they mentioned, the conditions for it, for a person to apply this, is that he has to have the knowledge of the ruling. Because if he enjoins good, he has to know that this is a matter of goodness in the deen, or forbidding an evil, he has to know that this is evil. So if he does not have the knowledge, then he would do more harm than anything else. The second condition is that he has to have the knowledge of the person that is being ordered or forbidden from the evil, right? So a person, for example, he might not be responsible for his actions, or he might be someone that is, again, even though the disbelievers are addressed by the rulings of the deen, but he has to be a Muslim first, for example. So he has to know the affairs of the person that he is enjoining the good or forbidding the evil. Like, for example, a person sees someone that doesn't pray at the time of Asr. Well, what if he was a traveler and he combined the Salah, Dhuhr, and Asr at the time of Dhuhr? Right? So he has to know the affairs of the person that he is trying to forbid the evil from. The same thing with matters that if a person, some of the things that has differences of opinions, the person might be upon an opinion, but it's a valid opinion that he doesn't do something or did something based on an opinion, valid opinion among the people of knowledge. So to know also, this is a matter of goodness that needs to be, a person has to be aware of this. So this is an important one. Also, to have the knowledge, one of the conditions is to have the knowledge of that individual while he is being addressed by the subject. Again, like, for example, as Sheikh Ibrahim, I remember explaining this hadith when he said that if you see someone enter the masjid and then he sat down, regardless of the difference of opinion there, a person did not pray the 2 rak'ah in the normal times, not in the forbidden times. Because in the forbidden times, there's a difference of opinions. And of course, the opinion is to pray 2 rak'ah before you sit down. But if you saw someone enter the masjid and he sat down, but you have doubt whether he prayed or not, do not forbid him from that action, and you do not order him till you get to know. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, even in the khutbah, he asked the man, did you pray? Not saying pray, but he asked him first. Another condition is that a person has to have the ability to enjoin the good and forbid the evil without harm happening to him, without harm happens in general. And if the harm is only to him and not beyond himself, then if you have the patience, then that's a good thing. And it depends also on the level of the harm. And that means the person has to have a level of ijtihad, a level of judging the situation to see what's the outcome of it to the best of his ability. And the other condition also is that joining the good and forbidding the evil does not lead to a bigger munkar or a bigger evil, and that becomes munkar in itself. So, and of course, as the ulama mentioned, that a person has to be given the permission by the imam or by the person of authority to change things with his own hands, as we talked about that before. Sheikh Ibn Baz rahimahullah also saying that enjoining good and forbidding evil is fard ayn. This is a mandatory thing upon each and every Muslim. And if a person is able to change it, and that's again, but considering these levels, so the least is with one's heart, and to keep the heart alive with al-iman is to forbid the evil with the heart, and to read the book of Allah, to have righteousness and to be upon what is righteousness. Because the more the person commits a sin, the more he becomes at ease with the sin, till he reaches a level where he does not find this in his heart, which is one of the evil consequences of committing the sin. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who have the knowledge and to apply it in what means that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to the ones, again, to one's best abilities. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, inshallah. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.